Challenges are a given in any career, but how do you navigate them, especially right after you finish school? And how does the reality of research look like in those initial years? Get ready to uncover these answers. Welcome to the Decoding Phase Transitions, the DPT podcast, where we decode the fascinating career phases of brilliant minds who have navigated the complex worlds of academia and beyond. In today's episode, we are delighted to welcome Professor Andreas Kreisel. Professor Kreisel is a physicist. He is currently an assistant professor at Niels Bohr Institute, University of Copenhagen in Denmark, and he has a fascinating career journey into the world of science. Growing up in a village near Frankfurt am Main in Germany, Professor Kreisel began his academic career at Goethe University Frankfurt, completing his diploma in physics, a degree which at that time combined both bachelor's and master's studies. It is there where his passion for physics truly blossomed, complemented by a love for teaching as a tutor and the allure of exploring new places. These interests ultimately propelled him towards pursuing a doctoral degree. He earned his PhD degree from Goethe University of Frankfurt with a dissertation focusing on the intricate spin-wave calculations for Heisenberg magnets. His extensive research path has taken him across the continents, including postdoctoral work at the University of Florida in the US and at Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen. He has also completed his habilitation from University of Leipzig. And we are truly excited to share that starting early 2026, Professor Kreisel will embark on a new chapter as an associate professor at Uppsala University in Sweden. His current research is at the cutting edge of physics, focusing on emerging phases and unconventional superconductivity. He tackles these complex phases of materials using theoretical and computational methods, always in close collaborations with experimentalists. In this episode, we are diving deep into the decisions and strategies that has shaped Professor Kreisel's career path. You will get insights on bridging the knowledge gaps and learn what to expect navigating through challenges in the early career days. We'll unpack the intricacies, how research is truly done, and what a PhD degree entails. For part 1 of our conversation, we'll focus on his remarkable path up to and including his PhD journey. Then in part 2, we'll explore his postdoctoral experience, his habilitation, and beyond. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Andreas Kreisel. Welcome, Andreas, to our podcast, Decoding the Phase Transition. And thank you for agreeing to do this. I'm very excited to have you as a guest. Let me start by asking you this question. Was there a moment in your career or your schooling in early childhood where you fell in love with physics?
Well, at that point, I would say there was not. The reason why I then continued to work and go to academics and study was actually sparked in high school time when I was introduced to a little bit more scientific approaches to physical problems, and that's why I then decided to go. First, I was mostly interested in science in general, whether it was chemistry, biology, or physics, maybe math. I was not so sure, but then I decided physics because it seemed to be a little bit branching out umbrella type of education, and that I pursued, and I think I'm very happy. I was exposed to many different topics and many different viewpoints.
So let me go back to your childhood. Let us dive into your upbringing a little bit. Could you please tell us how was your early childhood? Where did you do your schooling? And was there any teacher or anybody in your family even? Or was there any role model in your school or in the family who had inspired you in a way to go ahead in life and do something?
So I grew up actually in a small village, just 50 kilometers away from Frankfurt. In my childhood, I experienced a lot of nature. We had at home we had also some animals. My parents and grandparents were having some pigs and chicken and so on.
You have a farm?
I had a small farm, but this was not the main source of income. This was just on the side. On the other hand, I was also exposed to some work, repair work, some work on the house, kind of learning also as a small child how things are put together and how things work in daily life. And that kind of sparked my interest in understanding the world, understanding how things works. In elementary school, things about electricity and how the circuits work and so on. That was something that I was quite interested and I was enjoying quite a bit. And that was maybe also partially the reason why I then continued towards the career that I finally made.
Did you find math and physics and chemistry easy at that point, or you were good at everything?
I would say in school, and that is more like the middle school or so, I think math and also science education was quite easy. But I would also say that also the other topics were not completely challenging. I was always having quite a bit of challenges, or I was also good, but I was a little bit more challenged in languages. Actually, I also then later in high school specialized a little bit towards learning languages. So that was the second part of the specialization. And I have to say, also later on, I was still enjoying learning new languages in the sense of being exposed to a new country and then also learning the language of that people if time permits. And
how many languages do you know now?
Well, okay, it depends a little bit what you count as knowing. I would say languages I'm very good in is of course German, my mother tongue, and English. But by now also Danish I know quite a bit and can communicate here. And then I learned also French and Portuguese. So French was in school. I think I would not have an easy time in doing a conversation now because it's a long time ago since I spoke last time. And then Portuguese I actually learned because I was on an exchange program in Brazil during my PhD time.
Okay.
So that exposed me to another country, to nice insights in a new culture. And I was very happy about this opportunity.
Okay, we'll go there, your PhD days and the exposures. But in school, did you have to learn Latin or was it a compulsory course for you?
Well, in Germany, it is compulsory or was compulsory by that time to learn a second language where you could in principle choose between Latin and French.
Okay.
But most of the people actually, or majority choose French, which I also did.
Okay. Okay. Tell us a little bit about the different school types. Like in Germany, if you want to study physics, you have to go to gymnasium and you have to pass Abitur. Is it right?
Yes. I mean, in Germany, there is the elementary school, and then after a fourth grade, you usually decide which type of higher or middle education you choose. By now, most of the people choose actually the gymnasium. That is now happening. Actually, in my case, I did not go to gymnasium. I actually went to the Realschule, to the middle school by that time. The system is still open that after the 10th grade or 10th class, you can actually then continue to gymnasium for doing the Abitur afterwards. So in that sense, you don't have to make the decision in the fourth grade, but not many people actually do the middle school and then continuing for the gymnasium. I don't know exactly how it is now, but by the time I did the Abitur, this was more or less the only possibility to go to university. And also having the Abitur, basically all branches of studying were open, from medicine to physics to law and all of them. And now I think there is even the possibility to go to university if you have not made the Abitur, but did a qualified education in some profession. And then you can afterwards enter some branches of university without having Abitur. So in that sense, it's a little bit more open. Also for people of those types. But I don't know anybody who did it actually in science or in physics.
Yes, as far as I know, at least in physics, it's still you have to do Abitur, or as you were saying, maybe some work experience, but then that is also taking longer, right? You take long time to study. And as far as my information goes, I knew that you cannot choose the schools. Your class teacher or the school administration chooses you in the elementary school which school you go to.
That was, to my information, right when I was in school, where really the teachers ranked and then gave some freedom to the parents and children to choose. I think by the time I was going through the system, or a little bit later, this was changed such that actually the parents can decide and only get a recommendation from the teachers, whether it's good or bad, that one can decide. Because in some cases, also when I was in school, there were some recommendations which the parents did not follow, and then the child had quite some problems in pursuing the schooling, which I'm not sure whether it was a good decision in some cases. But as I said, I think the system is still quite flexible and porous to allow for later development. So
that's
not
also
that
important.
the age of 10 you decide whether you go to university or whether you cannot go.
That's correct. Growing up, what role your parents play in your early childhood or later to give you the environment and maybe other facilities to grow your curiosity or to find your own path?
Let me say in this way, my parents gave me always the freedom or flexibility to pursue my curiosity and also spend time in acquiring knowledge, and they also helped me. In the end, also gave some financial flexibility to actually go to university, because it's in the end, it's after school, it's another couple of years where you don't have big earnings, and that gives quite some additional pressure to the economy of the family. Nowadays, there is also help from the government and so on. So it's not a big burden, but in some cases influences the decisions. But that I never had the feeling on. So my family and also my grandfather, he always said, "Oh yes, you do your path, and you don't have to take the same profession as I did," because he probably hadn't had much of a choice by that time.
So you had great family support, and then you said in high school you decided that you want to go for physics or maths, not so much directly, but some applications.
Yes, and that was partially also a little bit influenced by some of my peers, plus some of my friends who also went in that direction. I mean, in the end, I studied chemistry and also math and physics, but for teacher.
Okay.
And then I mean I was in that peer group, and I said that's maybe not for me, but I will do the physics. I'm happy to understand all these things. One has to say on that perspective, there is still a big gap between the type of questions and the type of education you do in high school compared to what you then actually do in university, which was to me also quite a surprise, but was not, let me say, a big burden, because all of the other students had the same same impression that now topics were much more challenging. Things were discussed which were completely unknown to you, but everybody had to struggle under that, and then one had this common effort of we want to know this. We have to go through this education system. Also, it's more challenging than school, but still having fun and trying to understand all the math problems, which were in the beginning the most challenging things, which was not anticipated, because this approach of not calculus, but more the approach of theorem and proof and mathematical rigorosity, that was quite different from what was expected.
I see. Your decision to go to Goethe University was because it's in the vicinity or geographical location, or was it something else?
No, that was a vicinity. One also has to say that in my family, or near family, nobody went to university before. So that was also a little bit a step out. And at that point, I was a little bit lacking the knowledge or backup from the family, simply because I could not ask anybody directly in the family about how is it to study, how did you do it, and so on. But I think it worked out quite well, getting a little bit the bridge between the university life, the studying all these challenging problems, but then at the same time still being in the region. I know other people decided completely differently, moved to a different country or different region within Germany. But in my case, this was not so easy, let me say at this point. Because, let me also say, I would have had a hard time to make any arguments why to go to one or another university, especially as a high school student, not knowing what Goethe University is special about in terms of topics.
Sure. These are pre-internet, pre-technology boom era, right? So it's basically we had little
information available. And of course, you could, and which we actually did before we went to the university and spoke to some of the professors. But of course, there is still quite a gap between the topics that the professors talk to you about and the things you know by that time. But of course, nowadays, much more information is available, and contact information is available, and partially also what you're proposing here to expose some podcasts and give some information.
Yes, that's my target, to help people. We had no information back then, and I still think there is a lot of information is lacking. Living students do not have information, or they are not connected to the people who are really working in academia, not necessarily, and they don't have a real life idea how things turn out, what challenges, as you were talking about. I really hope that my listeners will get some help out of these conversations. And that's why I'm asking in detail some of the things here. You said that before entering the university, you had a chance to talk to professors of different universities. Is that correct, as a student?
Yes, well, not different universities. I went actually to Goethe University and talked to two of the professors by that time.
How did you approach them?
By that time, it was a internet time, but there was still some information. They had web page and
they had telephone numbers,
contact information, and I essentially just wrote an email by that time to the professor, and he said, yeah, on this day, Monday or whatever, I forgot which day it was, 3 to 5, I'm available. And then we just showed up and had a nice conversation and got some. In that sense, in hindsight, it was also a little bit advertisement for the physics program, but we cannot blame anybody for this. And we did it actually also together with, at other faculties as well. So we also went to the chemistry department and the math department and had also conversations with some professors there and got some insights. It was also, in that sense, closing the gap between academia, the professors, the well-established people, and that one actually can approach them, and which is also a good thing.
Yeah. The accessibility and the exposure, I guess it's also nice for the school living students to see university environment and how people are in person. So it's also less intimidating for them when they make the transition. So when you decided to come to Goethe University, you studied physics there. You said that there were some challenges and you were, as a group of students in your cohort, you were trying to overcome those challenges. Can you delve a little bit deeper into the exact kind of challenges and how, as a group, you came to the solutions? Let's say some school leaving students are listening to this today and they are in Germany or somewhere else, and they are about to face these challenges no matter what, because there is a huge gap of the university study and the school studies, right? In physics or in mathematics or whatever branch they choose. Can you give a little bit of challenges they should expect? And what you faced also, and as a group, as a cohort, what are the skills that they can gather together to overcome this?
Yes. So let me just say that my situation and also the situation of some of my colleagues was a little bit special because we were actually not living in Frankfurt by that time. We were commuting every day. Which gave a little bit the challenges that apart from during the lectures or the exercise times, we did not have too much contact to our direct peers from the study. So therefore, what was a little bit missing is this thing of sitting together and doing problem solving or reviewing the lecture topic and so on, which by that time I somehow had to do a little bit more on my own than maybe some of the others. But let me also say that together with my colleagues from the high school, we actually met together and also met together in the train and so on, and discussed a little bit our own types of problems and even helped each other a little bit. But let me come back to the challenges in that sense. That, as I said, the gap between the types of questions, tasks to solve or to hand in school and the types of questions and tasks that were then discussed in university, that was quite high. And that required really a lot of effort and time and also kind of, let me say, flexibility and thinking to actually solve some of these things. And that took quite some time, weekly time. But in hindsight, afterwards, it was also a good investment because that sharpened a little bit the flexibility of being kind of educated towards problem solving without having prior knowledge, which, let me say it this way, if a lot of information is available and a lot of help is available, also weakens a little bit the education, let me say. I mean, of course, I'm not saying, oh, everything was more difficult earlier and now, but I'm just saying challenges in the academic education, they are also good in the sense that you learn something afterwards, and it's not just kind of drowning you in these problems and then solve it or die. Liked it quite a bit during that time to really go into this complicated, by that looking complicated, and then actually working on them. In terms of challenges, how the education was organized, I would say when I was studying, it was a little bit more flexible in the sense that the curriculum was not so organized. So now with this Bologna process where you have the bachelor education and the master education, it's quite fixed which modules you have to take, which modules you have to pass, and takes out quite some flexibility for the student to say, oh, I don't like this topic. I skipped that topic, but I'm interested in, let's say, astrophysics. So I do this topic, but I'm not interested in learning about sound waves. So that's not interesting. And we had this flexibility because we had just a number of lectures which we had to fulfill, but there was a big freedom of selecting specialties. Already in the second year, you had to make some choices and could skip some of the lectures, which now is really not that possible anymore, and puts a lot of stress to the students because they have to finish this year, and then if they don't pass the exam, they have to do it next year again, but also next year again, another module again, which is quite challenging, and which I also saw from the other side as a teacher later on when I was lecturing at the University of Leipzig, where I realized that my time as a student was much more relaxing compared to the time of the students nowadays or a couple of years ago.
But that also gives a little bit of choice at the end for the students nowadays, I guess, right? Because they are going through this structured way. If you want to pursue master's or PhD, then you do not have to go back and relearn some of the topics which you didn't cover.
And, let me say, of course. To get a little bit more complete knowledge, because all students went to all the 16 modules or the 16 courses. It might also may bring a little bit more knowledge in terms of what the students are expected to know, even if they are going towards doing the thesis work, and then the professor know, okay, this was done in the lecture, this is something the student should know, and so on. Let me point one other thing that was not so good earlier, namely that the decision of whether it's physics or some other topic you study is the matching topic for the student in terms of the background or the interests, that this decision was delayed quite a bit for some of my peers. So when I started, and that was a known problem, is that only half of the students actually completed by that time the diploma. So probably, and it was true that every second student that showed up in the first lectures was then dropping out earlier or later. And because it was not so structured, for some of the students, this happened quite late, in the sense that some of the students were studying 3-4 years and then realizing, okay, that's too difficult. This is not for me. But then having spent multiple years in physics education and then leaving university or leaving towards another study program, without having any certificate or any diploma. And that is not happening now anymore, because a little bit early on, it puts some pressure to the student either to make the first modules or to drop out earlier. And that can be quite some advantage. Let me also say that on the backside of this also puts some pressure to students who might have some additional struggles in the first year, because they have moved to new, have some other challenges for living not with the parents anymore, or some other things, and then putting the additional pressure now in this year you need to perform well, and if you don't, you are dropping out, and that could cut off a small number of students who actually might be good
Promising
students after some time. But it's a difficult decision what system to use
True.
in the end, and what is the advantage and disadvantage. But I would say, given that many students have the opportunity to study, the current system is still a quite good system, which allows a lot of students to enter, and then also in that sense also gives them a degree after 3 years, which was not the case before, because there you had to go the whole 5 years. And if you don't make it to the diploma, then you drop out. Let me also say that some of the peers by that time dropped out physics education, but still by that time got other good jobs, even they had not finished their studies. So that especially for physics, is also possible, because you acquire, even in the first couple of years, some skills such that you can take a trainee job in a company like which is, for example, software development or other industry, or in the bank industry, where mathematical skills are needed, even though it's not so important to have the diploma or the master's degree, which puts a stamp on you. Now you have done all the courses that is in the curriculum, but maybe not all of this information is needed. The important thing that you learn in the physics education is that you are flexible, and that you can solve challenging problems on your own, and that's also what you can learn in the undergraduate.
I think both the technical skills and the skill of problem solving, critical thinking, they are very transferable to other industries and other jobs. So if you're studying physics or other subjects like math, and maybe also in chemistry, you get some kind of critical thinking that you can apply to other industry, and you take those skills to other jobs. So as you said, it's also important to keep in mind the first year will be challenging, because of many changes, because maybe figuring out life of your own for the first time outside the parental house, and figuring out life in a new city, new environment, and also the challenges of the studies that brings. But I guess that there are a lot of now information available, and people, if they know earlier what to expect from this year, the first year and the year after, that it prepares you better than not knowing and figuring out at the moment. So you got your diploma, and so this was bachelor's and master's together, is it right? In
Yes.
your time?
So by that time it was diploma. It was said to be 5 years. Some of the students finished after 5 years. Some took 6-7 years. That was the standard. And then after that, for my personal taste, it was the question what to do then. And I also looked into options of going to industry, working in production companies. In the Frankfurt area, there are some, that actually do research on materials development, permanent magnets. There is some metal industry, and I actually visited some of the companies in some visiting programs for students by that time to figure out whether this could be also something for me. And I decided that could be something, but then came the opportunity to actually continue as a university PhD student. And that was very compelling for me because I could, by that time, then get a little bit more exposed to also working with other students by tutoring or doing exercise classes, which I liked quite a bit, teach the new generation and pursue this. And the other component that made me then make this decision was that it was going with the opportunity to actually visit other countries and other universities. So that was a possibility. By that time, there were actually two things that could happen because by that time my professor was actually applying for a sabbatical to US, which in the end did not work out because of other reasons. But then it worked out to actually have be on this exchange program with Brazil, which was a very nice experience for me and was actually paying back a lot of the efforts that I had to take.
Yeah. I want to take you a little back in time here when you were finishing back then your diploma. First of all, you had lots of options. As you said, there was also the option to go to industry. You chose research as a PhD scholar because of these opportunities, tutoring and going to other countries, the exposure. But you also had this possibility of choosing experiment or theory and choosing which PI to go to for doing your PhD degree. How did you choose that?
Okay, by that time it was mostly governed by the knowledge of the professors from lectures, because by that time, I mean, you had a series of lectures, and then there was always contact with one or the other professor, and that gave you some guidance of the topics and also of the personnel. And I was by that time attracted quite a bit towards solid state physics because we had a very good introductory lectures on this topic. And that's what made me a little bit bent towards that. At that time, again, probably one could have a broader overview by knowing more professors. Personally, it's kind of a little bit not so easy to get a lot of insights by just showing up for a half an hour discussion, because then you don't know all the personal insights there. So therefore, in the end, I think I have not, by that time, I have not seen the whole spectrum of the research, even in Frankfurt before making this decision, but had only a selected one that was guided by teaching. Nowadays, think about a lot is that having good teaching skills and preparing good lectures and modules kind of sparks the interest to students. And students, for my situation right now, are the mostly highly rated ingredient for doing any research work. And that's why good teaching is a key to also being successful in my state of my career right now. So, but in the end, I mean, it was personal interest. It was also a little bit friendliness and how the professors were approaching. And this is to swap a little bit topics or branch out a little bit. This is also a little bit different in different countries. So, I mean, Germany is probably a little bit in the middle where the contact between professors and students might be a little bit formal in some cases. But for example, here in Denmark and also in US, There is no personal difference between professors and students. And that facilitates quite a bit of the students approaching professors and also students kind of getting to know everybody and then deciding on personal interests.
Yeah, and I think it also gives the students an idea how the research group works and how the person is, so they can also a little bit decide on their own the interest. But also, as you said, the good teachers also do spark the curiosity in the right direction, and that helps also people to figure out which direction to go to for research or for further career moves. So you decided after then the lecture of Professor Peter Kopitz that you want to go to his group to pursue your doctoral studies. And how was your experience in the group? And you already told us the exposure that came with it, because you had also a cultural exposure. You went to Brazil and you had collaborations maybe all over across many different countries. So tell us about your PhD experience and also a little bit about your PhD question, that in a broad sense, what was the question and how did you go about solving it in a way that a school leaving student also can understand?
Yes. So to introduce the topic for a second, my research by that time was centered of trying to understand magnets. And let me just branch out here that my research topic, which was about, in a broad sense, magnets from a theoretical point of view, was by that time attached to actually experimental investigations. And this connection is and stayed the whole of my career a kind of important point that when you talk about theoretically understanding or theoretical calculation or theoretical approaches, that it's very important for me to actually have a verification, to have an anchor about the research work, that this is actually interesting and relevant for experimental investigations, and actually that the quantities I calculate and that I draw some graphs in my computer, that exactly those quantities are actually seen on a measurement apparatus in some lab in some sense. So in that sense, that's important, and that I appreciated quite a bit, because this also is towards bridging in discussions, scientific discussions, with people that might have a slightly different background, that might not have all the theoretical knowledge, but then still you want to pursue your message and need to formulate it in a way that is a little bit simpler and that is understandable on the level of the other person. So, I mean, going back a little bit to the research topic, to give a little bit insights. So what we investigated is this question of which types of energy packages can be absorbed in such magnets. And that is related to the properties of quantum mechanics. If somebody has a little bit of knowledge about that, probably in school you learn about this famous Bohr model for the hydrogen atom, which was actually done here in this nice institute around 100 years ago, where it is known that quantum mechanics has the property that certain energy levels are only allowed, and then that certain energy packages can be stored in quantum systems. And now in a magnet, it's a little bit more complicated, because then the energy levels, they are given, for example, by the allowed microscopic magnetic moments, which, depending on their alignment, have some energy, and this gives rise to the possible energy packages that can be stored in this magnet. And then what was done experimentally was actually a probing of this so-called magnon modes and magnon quasi-particles, which I at that time calculated the spectrum for, and experimentally it was measured. And I actually appreciated that I could actually also visit the lab of my, by that time, PhD peers, which we worked together, and actually see what they are doing and how they are doing the measurements, and what knobs they have to turn in order to see the quantities I calculated.
Where were these experimentalists based on?
This was a collaboration actually with the University of Kaiserslautern in Germany. So by that time, we were just traveling a couple of times back and forth, and they were visiting, I was visiting. And then the external collaborators, which some of them were in Germany and some of them were actually also then in Brazil, these were actually theory collaborators. And then discussions and visits also happened. And one might now say, nowadays with video conferencing and Zoom and so on, visits are not needed. I think it is a great advantage that we can talk over the distance, but I think still in research is important the personal beyond the 2 hours that you can talk over the internet. In all my career, I had contact to people. I think the good research outcomes were only happening after actually there was a physical overlap of weeks and months between me and the student, between me and the postdoc, me and some other collaborators. So that's important, and that's a good and important part, in my view, also of our academics, to talk to people, pursue your ideas, interacting with people, and then maybe have some breaks on that, and try to work on your own, on your tasks. But still, you have to go back and discuss and do brainstorming about ideas, which is beyond what you can do just on your own.
Science is still very much collaborative, and of course these discussions are very helpful. And I also know I had the opportunity to have you as a collaborator. You are very helpful, and I have talked to other people also. You had helped everybody also very much in their PhD days and their postdoc days, and also like it's good environment for learning for also the young researcher when you spend so much time together discussing, brainstorming, and they can also voice their opinion in an open manner. That gives a very productive environment for everybody, I guess. And also it boosts a lot of confidence for the young individuals in their research and in their career path. So
yes.
Yeah, and so you had this experimental collaboration to figure out which energy packets are allowed or can be absorbed in the magnetic system. You did also use a theoretical tool to do that. Can you go a little bit deeper into the way you were calculating, and you can name the methods and maybe a guide towards that?
So, this project, as I said, this was purely was based on quantum mechanics. So we had to do quite a bit of algebra to basically describe the quantum mechanics problem. So this was working with Hamiltonians, using the properties of so-called operators, which are objects that can be multiplied, but the multiplication does not compute. And then it was quite a bit on paper and pencil work to simplify the corresponding expressions. And then afterwards, it was a little bit of programming to actually implement the corresponding equations and actually solve them on the computer. So broadly speaking, often it was solving a big integral of some type. As for quantum mechanics, often you needed to calculate the eigenvalues and the eigenvectors of some matrices. So it was types of linear algebra calculations. But by that time, all the calculations in principle could be done on nowadays just a laptop. So that was mostly the work during my master's diploma time and the PhD time. A lot of things were actually about trying to figure out relevant parameters and trying to figure out, when you have a big equation, how to simplify this equation and how to discard some terms in the equation because of physical reasoning or because of what we usually say a small parameter expansion, where you say, this term is small because it has a prefactor which is quadratic in a small quantity. So we don't consider this term because we are only focusing on the terms that are linear or have a power of one of this small quantity. And that, one has to say, as a student, was quite a difficult task, and that I was quite relying also then on the supervision of my collaborators to know some pre-knowledge of how to approach these things. One also has to say that's also in later stages, I realized that quite a bit, that many of the methods, much of the physics that we were applying and using theoretically was already worked out many years ago in other contexts. So it's a lot about going into the literature, knowing where to read up about things that were done before. And that is also something that was not anticipated by me in the very beginning. But that's a very important part of the
Doing
supervision.
research.
But on the other hand, it's also very important that students bring in new ideas and also divert and try to convince the ideas of the supervisors to some new ideas and some new insights, which come maybe from other types of research or from lectures or from common knowledge nowadays, which maybe giving some advantage in pursuing or solving problems.
Yes, that's true. PhD is about also asking a unique question. As you said, we base our question also what previously done. Literature review is major part of also the research. Can you also tell us a little bit about your unique solution to that particular question or particular approach that you took? Because I guess also people want to know, who wants to pursue PhD, that how this whole research question, asking a research question that is unique, that hasn't been solved before, and getting to a solution in a unique way, how it's done in reality.
So let me say, by the time of my PhD, there was, of course, one has to say that research is always only a very small part of solving the big picture. And of course, it's only a very small corner and very specialized, and it has to be because a lot of things have been understood already. But the topic I was working was basically under the umbrella of understanding quantum nature of bosons. And there was this idea, and it was worked on before already, of this Bose-Einstein condensation, where quasi-particles can occupy the same quantum state at very low temperatures. And in our case, it was the proposal that in these special magnets, which were actually very thin films of magnets, there was a possibility to actually realize this condensation of bosons, that many particles are in the same quantum state. And one step towards that was actually to understand the eigenenergies and the eigenstates of these bosons. And then later on, which was by the end of my PhD, we tried to understand the dynamics of this boson system and essentially also tried to understand how these particles can occupy the same quantum state and what has it as consequences for experimental observations. And that was part of this understanding, and that was also then continued in the group with other PhD students who then did, as I said, the dynamics and investigated this boson condensation with finite velocity. Actually, this was then a spin-off a project on this research, which, as I said, then was making direct predictions which could be verified or falsified in the lab experiments then later on. And this kind of topic is part, if you go a little bit broader, towards understanding how quantum mechanical particles interact and bring in some new, what we call new phases, because somehow the properties of constituents might be completely different than the properties of the total thing. So a simple example would be if you go back to biology and think about a single bird, then you can study how the bird flies and what is the dynamics and what movement it can do. But a completely different question would be how 1,000 birds interact and move in a swarm, which can have quite a variety of properties and behaves completely differently than a single bird. And in a sense, the research in solid state physics and other areas of physics is about understanding how the properties of a single particle then maps towards the properties of many particles interacting. And this research topic is said about the research of emergent phases, which are usually different, qualitatively different from the constituents. And this research topic was in the last couple of years also part of my research, where I actually moved away a little bit from understanding magnets towards understanding so-called superconductors, which have the property that you can conduct electricity without losses, which comes from the properties of the electrons in that system and how they interact with each other. I mean, with this, as I said, this is connecting to many topics of solid state research, and is a broad umbrella topic of many of our collaborators.
The emergent phenomena and the emerging phases are really at the center of research and research interest. And it's really growing the community, I would say, right? What are the lessons that you had learned from your PhD at the end? And what are the skills that you got out of it?
Yes, so in the big part of this knowledge I had was based on knowing how research actually works and knowing how people work collaboratively together and how you can come one step beyond your current knowledge only by efforts that multiple people have. Of course, it's often a problem in terms of if you work together with projects, it's not so clear who did what and who gets the most credit for the outcome. But what I learned is that the research community by itself seems to be a quite friendly community in the sense that it's in the end, it's not so important who made which contribution. Everybody is happy that one has found actually the solution and has solved the problem. and then is also happy that new open questions appeared and that can spark new research efforts. And that also led me then towards branching out and trying to kind of pursue some further research and trying to find a new host and a new possibility to continue my journey in research, which then brought me actually away from Germany and gave me the opportunity to learn about a slightly different research culture and also get exposed to another country, which I think it's a great opportunity, which not all people have, and that's a big freedom in research. On the one hand, it puts some pressure that you actually have to move to other countries, that you have to be flexible in that sense, but also gives the opportunity to get exposed to other cultures and get to know other great people and broaden your view.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have that kind of perspective in life, and that kind of knowledge and education from other culture is always, it does influence a lot on your thinking, your way of life, and everything. And I find it very important, having done it myself several times. And it's very fortunate that we could do that through our journey in academia. I guess we have to talk about your US days and Florida days in the next part. Thank you, Andreas, for having time today. Let's continue this discussion in the part 2.
All right. Thank you. And I'll see you another time.
That brings us to the end of part 1 of our conversation with Professor Andreas Kreisel. We have covered so much, from his early passion for how things work to the intricate details of his PhD journey and what truly drives research. We hope that you have gained valuable insights in navigating those initial years right after school and the realities of a demanding academic career. Be sure to tune in for part 2 of our conversation, where we'll dive deep into his postdoctoral experience, his habilitation, and his upcoming role as an assistant professor at Uppsala University in Sweden. Believe me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.